Hello, this is Kerry Hall, America's Healthcare Advocate. You know, I live in Kansas. Do you know that we have the highest tax rate in any of our neighboring states? The lowest growth rate, 1.4%. We have the highest property taxes, which seems to be on everybody's mind. You want change? Listen to today's show. Philip Sarnecki is running for governor. He will make changes, starting with auditing every branch of the Kansas government for fraud and waste. Stay tuned. Learn why you should vote for Philip Sarnecki.
This is America's Healthcare Advocate, your guide to protecting your personal health, bringing you simplified answers to the complex questions surrounding healthcare, empowering you to take control of your health and wellness.
My very special guest today, Grace Marie Turner.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and I do have to say, you are the most knowledgeable about health policy, just superlative.
Broadcasting coast to coast across the USA.
Fact versus fiction.
This is what we mean by separating fact from fiction on the subject of healthcare.
Just walk me through this. That's kind of like drinking from a fire hose.
You know, we do these shows for a reason.
America's Healthcare Advocate, Kerry Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. You know, you can find out more about us by going up on our website. Also, all these shows are on our podcast and YouTube platform. By the way, the new number for downloads, 702,897. It is quite remarkable that all of you out there keep downloading these shows, and we just keep this number rolling along thanks to our producers, Mr. Dave Thiessen and Garner Cowdery, who put all this together and make it happen. Mr. Thiessen does all of the videos, the podcasts, and the YouTube stuff, and does a great job of it. And then Garner, obviously, over here on the audio in the Cumulus studio. So thank you once again to all of you for listening, and to all of you who download these shows on podcast and YouTube. Joining me in studio, is this our second or third show? I can't remember. It's our third.
We did one early on.
See that? Yes, we did. Our third show. The next governor of the state of Kansas, Philip Sarnecki. Welcome, Governor.
Kerry, great to be with you. Thank you. Great to be back.
It's great to have you here. And yes, he is a candidate for governor, and we're going to be talking about the primaries coming up here. But glad to have you back here.
Thank you.
Have seen a couple of your ads. I like the issues. These are very issue-oriented ads, as opposed to some of the others that I'm seeing. And I think that's what people are going to be looking for, Philip. So how is this going? I mean, I know you're all over the place. We're in studio very early this morning because I know you've probably got 5 different stops to make today. So how is the campaign going?
Campaign's going great. There's amazing energy all over the state. I mean, we have been everywhere from Sharon Springs and Goodland to...
Wait, where is Sharon? That's one I don't know. Where is Sharon Springs?
That's Mountain Time Zone.
Okay.
You're almost in Colorado.
Serious?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We had an event in Goodland. I think we had
I've been to Goodland.
About 100 people that evening.
Okay.
We've been to Dodge City, Liberal, Garden City, Wamego.
By the way,
Pratt.
it's liberal Kansas people, not liberal in Dodge.
That's
so
right.
you know.
That's right.
Folks out in Western Kansas are not liberals, just so we're clear.
Not that many. We've been to Wichita area a lot. I mean, my treasurer's from the Wichita area, my lieutenant governor candidate's from the Wichita area. I've owned businesses down there for 20 years, both on the financial services side and the quick lube side. My sister lives in Derby, so we've spent a lot of time down in the Wichita area. Obviously, Heidi and I live up here in Bucyrus, so we've literally been all over the state, and the energy that we're getting is amazing. We had an event last Wednesday night in Hayesville, if you know where Hayesville is.
I know where Hayesville is.
Yep, just south of Wichita.
Yeah.
And I was told, I didn't count, but we had 263 people at that event, and just amazing energy. People are tired of career politicians. They are tired of politics as usual. And of course, I'm telling people, well, if you're tired of politics as usual, let's stop voting for politicians.
And that's really the message.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think you've tapped into something. I said just earlier when we opened up that, I've seen your commercials and you're talking about issues. Not who endorsed you or this or that or something else. You're talking about issues. And to me, I think there's a hunger for that right now, especially in this state, where we think we're in, the red state, Kansas, and that's questionable in some cases. Okay, we've got a Democrat governor who's done everything she can to increase the state's payroll and the number of employees in the state and expand services that don't need to be expanded at the taxpayer's expense. Meanwhile, raising taxes, there's a surplus sitting in the bank, but why are we continuing to raise taxes, and why are we spending that money to add more layers of government when what we've got's not working?
Gary, our state government is crushing people across the state of Kansas. We are, we've talked about this before, but our income tax is the highest of every state in our region. Our corporate tax and sales tax are the second highest of every state in our region. Our property taxes... Far, far, far and away, that is the number one issue I hear all over the state.
Really, not just Johnson County, because we get killed here.
No. Oh, no.
Ours is absolutely the worst.
It's all over the state. It's the number one issue. And if you take those same states around us and you average them out, our property taxes are about 50% higher than those states on average. So property taxes aren't a problem in every state, but they're a massive problem in the state of Kansas. And unfortunately, Ty Masterson and the leadership and the legislature, they've promised property tax relief for at least 3 straight years to the people of the state of Kansas, and they've delivered nothing. Just a lot of talk. They haven't delivered anything. Yet what they have delivered is they've delivered property tax relief to green energy, wind farms, foreign companies. So there's property tax relief to go around, just not for the people of the state of Kansas.
I guess I'm in Johnson County. I definitely, because I live here, okay, and we're in the Blue Valley School District. My grandchildren go to school there. It's a great school district. They do a wonderful job, but the property taxes are insane. I mean, they are absolutely insane here, and they keep going up. They just went up again this year. They just keep going up every year, and we're fortunate. We're able to afford to pay it. That doesn't mean I like paying it. But there are a lot of people, especially I'm 77 years old. There are a lot of people in my age bracket and below me in age bracket who this is a real burden for. They're on fixed income retirements. They aren't still working. I'm blessed by the fact that I can still do this. But some people are literally going to lose their homes because they can't afford to pay their property tax. So where is the senior property tax relief discussion? That has been discussed. What about that, Philip?
Well, the stories around the state that I hear for the last 10 months while we've been on the campaign trail would break your heart. I had a woman come up to me. Her husband died. She's been in her house for 36 years. The house is paid off, but she said she's going to have to sell it because she can't afford the property taxes that continue to increase. And we hear stories like that all over the state. People are hurting. And what I tell people is, why has green energy, why have wind farms, why have foreign companies, why have they gotten property tax relief? Because they have lobbyists. Yeah. And unfortunately, the lobbyists they have way too much influence in Topeka, and the people of the state of Kansas don't have lobbyists. So in a sense, I'm running to be the lobbyist for the people of the state of Kansas, and we're running to help them. And that's what we have to deliver for people that are out there, because people are hurting. This is why CNBC ranked our economy 48th as a state and gave us an F. Moody's,
does that surprise you folks out there listening to this? We got an F.
We got an F, yeah. And so it's we've been overspending, overtaxing, and overregulating the people and the businesses in the state of Kansas to death, and we've got to turn it around.
And I think he's going to turn it around, and that's why I am praying and voting for him, and I hope that you're going to listen to this and do the same thing, because we need change in the state. We're going to talk more about why that is. We're going to talk about the tax situation versus where we stand with other states. We're going to talk about our education system, which these high property taxes are supposed to be supporting. What's it really doing? We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about why don't we seem to attract more people to the state of Kansas? We're going to talk about all that when we come back from the break. Stay tuned. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Got the next governor sitting right here. Stay right there. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. And I am proud to announce we have 2 more new affiliates in Topeka, Kansas, KCMO 102.9, brand new affiliate, part of the Cumulus family. We are on the air there now. That gives us 3 radio stations in Topeka, thanks to the folks at Cumulus, and a brand new one in Martinsburg, West Virginia. So all of you mountain people in West Virginia, we're very happy to be on the air there at 106.5 WRNR in Martinsburg, West Virginia, 106.5 ANFM. Thank you to Mike Hornby and the whole crew up there for putting us on the air. Very happy to welcome you into the America's Healthcare Advocate family. By the way, in studio with me again today, Philip Sarnecki. He is running for the governor of the state of Kansas. The website is philipsarnecki.org. It's spelled, Philip has one L, just one L. It's philipsarnecki.org. You can go up on his website. There's a lot of information up there. All these issues that we're talking about, they're up there on the website, okay? So you can actually see what he's going to do and what he's talking about. My opinion, he's the most issue-oriented candidate that we've got running for this office, and we definitely need a change from where we are. So let's get into this. Before we started this morning, I asked you what was the first thing you were going to do, and you said an audit, and I was like, holy cow. I can see him running for the hills the minute that you announce you're going to start. So explain what you're doing here, because I think it's fascinating, and I would just love to hear how this is going to proceed.
Well, I think one of the things that our state government needs a lot more of is transparency, and we need to deliver that to the people of the state. They deserve to know where their tax dollars are going or where their tax dollars are being spent. And so I heard about a couple of other states that brought in independent outside auditors to audit every department and every agency across the entire state. Now, obviously, that's a big job, $26 billion annual budget, tens of thousands of employees. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're going to start it right away. And we've actually talked to a couple of the firms that do this. And so we think there are billions of dollars, a couple $1 billion of waste, fraud across the entire state government in the state of Kansas. One thing a lot of people may not know is we have the 3rd most state employees per capita of any state in the country.
I knew that, by the way. That's why I mentioned Laura Kelly keeps adding.
Yeah. Well, and we only Alaska and South Dakota have more state employees per capita than Kansas does, and those are small states, so it kind of makes sense on a per capita basis. But in Kansas, it's a problem. And that $26 billion budget, we've added $10.5 billion of that in the last 7 years, with Republicans in charge of the state House and the state Senate, including supermajorities here most recently. And so unfortunately, we have a lot of Republicans that unfortunately and by the way, not all of them. There are some wonderful people in the legislature. I've been endorsed by some of them publicly. We have people there that are supporting us privately. They want change as well. They know that they need a leadership change in the Republican Party in the state of Kansas. And in the state of Kansas, when people learn about all these economic issues that are going on, it's like intuitively people know it. But what we're doing is we're giving them the empirical evidence to back up what they're feeling. And it's everywhere you look, whether you look at taxes, spending. We've run deficits now for 4 months in a row here in the state of Kansas.
I did not know that.
Yeah, we are spending more money than we're bringing in. Now, whether you're a family, a business, or a state, you have to understand.
That doesn't work.
That doesn't work. That's not a good thing. And at the state level, when we already have the highest income tax of every state in our region, our property taxes are already totally out of control. We have the 2nd highest corporate tax rate, as I talked about in the first segment, and yet we're still running deficits. That tells you we have a massive spending problem in the state of Kansas, and that's one of the big reasons we're going to do that audit to start and find the waste, find the fraud, and we're going to start cutting expenses, and we can start with the number of state employees that we have.
So I want to go back to this. $26 billion total budget, billion as in B, $10 billion in the last 7 years.
10.5.
Yep, okay. So who have been the governors for the last 7.5 years?
Yeah, Laura Kelly.
Thank you very much.
That's right.
She's added almost a third. It is a third.
Yeah.
More to this budget. And what do we have to show for it? So what are the results?
Higher taxes. Yeah, higher taxes and an economy that's not growing. Our economy last year grew at about 1.4%. It was the worst in our region. It's actually one of the worst in the country. Just to give you a comparison, like Utah's similar size population as Kansas, they grew at almost 8%. Tennessee is another state that's just crushing it, which, by the way, Tennessee has a governor, Bill Lee, who's finishing up his second term, very successful term.
Oh, yeah.
He had never run for office prior to running for governor. He had come out of the business world. When Heidi and I started looking at this several years ago, there were a dozen governors around the country who had never run for office prior to running for governor. They all came out of the business world, and several of them are, right around us. Governor Pillen in Nebraska, Doug Burgum at the time, Kevin Stitt down in Oklahoma, Governor Lee, Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. There's a lot of governors who came out of the business world because functionally, I think it's a different job. It's called the executive branch.
When you first did this, you talked about being the CEO of Kansas.
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
correct.
It's a business.
Yeah,
running it like a business.
Well, in a lot of ways, yeah. Now, I mean, obviously there are key differences
Correct.
as well. You're dealing with the legislature, et cetera. But I can't run a deficit in my business and just go back to the people of the state and say, "Hey, give me more money. I'm running my business poorly." And we shouldn't be able to do that in the state of Kansas either. We should run it with fiscal discipline, and we should make some decisions that are favorable for the people of the state of Kansas. And the other problem, Kerry, is we can't compete as a state. You brought up, population growth. We're dead last in our region from 2020 to 2026 in population growth. And, well, why would people move here when we don't have the jobs that we need? Our economy's not growing. We have the highest income tax in the region. Our property taxes where they are. People are not going to come to the state of Kansas. I mean, Missouri has a constitutional amendment on their ballot this fall to reduce income tax to zero.
Yep.
Kevin Stitt wants to do that in Oklahoma. Sarah Huckabee Sanders wants to do it in Arkansas. We already are struggling to compete, and as the states around us continue to lower their income tax, we are just getting crushed, and we're going to have an even more difficult time competing for population growth, for economic growth, for businesses. It's not a good situation, and we need some transformational change in the state of Kansas.
Now, I know you did Kevin Keatsman's show recently.
I did, yes.
And Keatsman talked about this issue a couple months ago when Kehoe put this on the ballot in Missouri. And it was very interesting. He said, my in-laws live in Lee Summit. And he said, I'm going to make a prediction. If Missouri passes the no income tax, and it's gradual, it's not all at one time,
sure.
but if they pass it, you're going to see a mass migration out of Overland Park. I mean, now maybe it won't be mass, but ask yourself a question. If you're making a fairly decent income, you and your wife, your family, and you could put 6% of that back in your pocket, and you could live in Lee Summit versus Overland Park, maybe you'd take a look at the real estate lease. So the point to what you said is, if we're behind the eight ball now, if this passes in Missouri,
right,
which I know the unions are against it. I know Mayor Q is against it, which is not surprising. These people, but if this passes in Missouri, it's going to be a real problem for the state of Kansas. And, we're coming up on the break here. When we come back, I want to hear what your reaction is to that and what you think will happen if this passes in Missouri. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network. If you're a concerned voter, and in this primary, we need to have somebody that's going to make a difference, go to the website, philipsarnecki.org. And Philip is 1L, philipsarnecki.org. All these issues that we're talking about are up there. Tell your friends. Tell the people in your church. Tell the people in your Kiwanis Club. Whatever the case may be, we need change in this state, and it's sitting right here. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate. Stay right there. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. In studio with me today, Philip Sarnecki, running for governor. The website, philipsarnecki.org. 1L in Philip. You want to look him up. There's a lot of good information up there. I'm 100% behind this man, and I hope he wins because I think we need change in the state. I love Kansas. I moved here from Kansas City to get out of Kansas City to escape the crime and all the rest of what was going on. I lived in Brookside, beautiful neighborhood, but it got to be too much. And I left on purpose to come to Johnson County because it's a much better place to live. I'd like to see that continue. The property taxes are too high. The state taxes are too high. We're not doing what we need to do to cause growth in this state. And we've got somebody here who's a businessman who put it all on the line and is willing to do it. Go to the website, philipsarnecki.org. Let's go back to this because there's a trend now. Okay, you just named these states. Missouri now. This was a surprise. I don't think people expected Kehoe to do this, and he is determined to make this happen. He's behind it. He's got all the government unions are against him on it. The AFL-CIO, they're all against him on it. Mayor Q is listening to him explain why he's against it is like word salad, but he's against it. But I think it's going to pass. I think people are going to go, oh, yeah. I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative. Tax dollars are tax dollars. So now you look at all these states around us that are no-tax states or in the process of becoming no-tax states. And then you go and you look at places that are going to the next level. Florida. Now Florida, and I've got good friends in Florida, no property tax. Wait a minute. How did they do that? Why can't we become a no-tax state at some point and get our house in order? And maybe when you finish these audits, who knows what you're going to find, Philip?
We've got to reduce the size of government in the state of Kansas. We got to make it more efficient. We've got to return dollars to the people of the state of Kansas. And we think we can have a significant impact on that. People are they're spending money, and I could blame it all on Laura Kelly, and certainly she deserves a big part of the blame. But the reality is, as I mentioned earlier, the Republicans have super majorities in the state House and Senate right now. And from a leadership standpoint, we have people that have been there for 2 decades. And they are not helping this issue. Unfortunately,
they're complicit, Philip.
They're complicit. Like we said earlier, there's too many lobbyists there in their back pockets. There's too many people. I mean, one of the things I want to do is I want to have term limits as well for the state House and the state Senate. And we're kind of kicking around what might be, 12 years to me seems like plenty of time.
Oh.
And then go back. I think that's how our framers.
The citizen legislator.
That's
absolutely. What it's supposed to be.
And I think the other thing, it would reduce the influence of lobbyists and the special interest because people wouldn't be trying to get reelected all the time.
Right.
And that's where the impact comes in, is because people constantly trying to get reelected. And so again, we need transformational change. We can't just kind of nibble around the edges of what's going on, because we are getting left behind as a state. There's no question about it. That data is overwhelming. Let me give you one more. We rank 42nd as a state in new business startups per capita. So we don't start near enough new businesses. Obviously, that has to do with the tax burden, the regulations. We have to take the shackles off our entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs here in the state of Kansas. But it actually gets worse because we're 48th in 5-year new business survival rate as a state. So not only do we not start enough businesses, but the ones we start, we don't keep them even 5 years comparatively to the other states. Well, obviously, then that impacts the number of jobs we have. That impacts the population growth. It impacts our GDP and our economic growth, which we're lagging way behind. So there's just so much opportunity here economically, from a tax standpoint, from a regulation standpoint. Here's an idea that I got, and I believe I can do this with an executive order to try to speed up how quickly we can start businesses. That if somebody is applying for a permit through the state, if they don't get it approved within 30 days, they get it for free.
Wow.
Yeah. And I can do that with an executive order. And it's just things like that I think we can do to make government more efficient, deliver things more quickly to the people of the state of Kansas. And I think it has to be somebody from the outside coming in. Who hasn't been part of the problem and part of the system for 2 decades.
And who's not worrying about lobbyists paying him.
Who's not worrying about lobbyists.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's a little different deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a little scary when you think about it. 42nd?
42nd in new business startups per capita, 48th in 5-year new business survival rate.
How do you expect to grow across the state we're sitting here in Johnson County. Johnson County has growth and a certain amount of it, and the rest of it, we still have the tax issue to deal with, all the rest of it. But then you get out to Hayes, you get out to Scott City, you get out to Dodge City, you get out to the other rural communities, you start looking, and there's opportunity there if somebody would take advantage of it. People will come and put businesses there if there's a reason for them to do it, and if there's a structure within the state that says, hey, we're going to help you start this business up here.
Well, I mentioned we were out in Goodland, Sharon Springs a few weeks ago, and in Goodland, there's a number of folks, entrepreneurs, business leaders that have started a wheat processing plant out there, and it's a wonderful concept. They're going to employ about 150 to 200 people in Goodland. That's significant.
Of course,
that's
it is.
Impactful. And there's things like that we can scale across the state. One of the things, as a business person, and the business people that are listening to this will understand, is you do a lot of what I call pilots, right? You test things. When McDonald's wants to roll out a new hamburger, they don't do it all over the world right away.
No.
They pick different areas and segments. Now, obviously, they're very strategic about it, but they test it to see how it'll work. And if it does work, then they scale it. And I think we can do a lot more of that as a state, too. I think we can do a lot more testing, piloting, and then scale things that are working across the state.
Can you do the audit with an executive order, or can you just do it, or do you have to have a piece of legislation to do that?
No, I believe we can just do it. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting, to say the least. All right, let's switch gears for a minute as we close out this segment. You talked about a faith office. Now, this is interesting because you're a man of faith. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell a story about Philip. I didn't tell him I was going to do this, but I'm going to do it. We had a meeting a couple of years ago with some executives from one of the biggest insurance companies. He was at his home office. In his home office, there's a painting, and it's a painting of a lion and Jesus Christ. Pretty powerful painting. And the people, after the meeting was over with, I had lunch with them a little later, and they said, does Philip realize he's got that painting there and he's telling people that he's a Christian? And I laughed and I said, yeah, he does. He doesn't wear it on his sleeve, but he believes what he believes. Now, I'm impressed with the fact that you're thinking of starting a faith office and you've seen it done in other states. Tell me why you're doing that. Well,
I can't take the credit for it. It's actually something Governor Lee in Tennessee did. They started a faith office there, and it's really, unfortunately, Laura Kelly has been very antagonistic towards people of faith.
Yes,
and there's probably more there that I've learned in the last 10 months than most people even know. But it's really pragmatic as well, because the faith office is partnering with churches and the faith community across the state to help solve problems like poverty, feeding, the homelessness, foster care, and it's really had a significant impact. And so there's really a pragmatic reason for doing this, because by partnering with the faith community across the state, we can actually reduce the size of government. Let me give you an example. I'm involved, I have a movie production company.
Yeah.
It's one of our businesses. I'm a partner. We do faith and family movies. And one of our movies that hopefully will be out soon in the theaters, a movie called One Heart. Well, it's a true story about a high school football team, Grapevine Faith, down in Texas, that played a game against a group of kids from a maximum security state high school penitentiary.
Yep.
And it was transformative in these kids' lives, this game. And I won't go into that now here on the show, but what we did, and my partner Steve, who lives in Texas, gets the credit for this, but I believe we're in 7 states now, including Kansas, is we have the One Heart, it's called the One Heart Project. And the One Heart Project works with kids in the justice system. And so, for example, in the state of Kansas, it costs approximately $120,000 a year to incarcerate one kid. That's what the taxpayers are paying, with about an 80% recidivism rate.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our One Heart Project costs about $20,000 a year and has a 9% recidivism rate. So whether you're a person of faith or not, from a pragmatic standpoint, would you like to save $100,000 a year per incarcerated kid in the state of Kansas that the taxpayers are paying and dramatically reduce the recidivism rate and introduce these folks back into the community. And we had last fall, for example, we had a graduation down in Wichita, and we had 3 kids graduate from the program just in Wichita. So that's going on in 7 states. And that's the kind of thing that the faith office can be involved in. That's the kind of thing that we can test and pilot and then scale across the state and really have not only a life-changing impact on these kids in this example, but we can also have a very pragmatic effect for the taxpayers, for the people of the state of Kansas.
And I've served on boards of directors for a number of these. Sheffield Place over in Missouri, I was on the board of directors there for some period of time where we took homeless women who were addicts and their children off the street. Our success ratio over there was 90%. Very intensive program. They were in it for years once they got into it, and it made a big difference. And I'm on the board of directors for the Little Sisters of the Poor right now, who run a nursing home that takes in people who don't have any money and have no place to go. And they provide a wonderful lifestyle for them. And they do a great job. So there's a place for this. We're not telling everybody that we're going to shove religion down your throat. That's not what this is about.
No,
what this
not at
is
all.
about is common sense
Yeah.
and providing an alternative for people that actually works with people who are dedicated enough to do it, Philip.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking. That the One Heart program. That's exactly. Do you want the kid to? You're training the kid to be a criminal when you put him in that system. That's what you're doing. That's why you have an 80% recidivism rate. Okay, I was a police officer when I was a young man. Believe me, I know. Okay, if you can turn that around and you've got people that are willing and dedicated to do it, why wouldn't you do it? So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it from a very pragmatic standpoint, it reduces the size of government. By partnering with the faith community, you can reduce the size of government. So even if you're not a person of faith, I think you can look at it and go, yeah, there's a lot of common sense there.
Common sense makes sense. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate. The website, philipsarnecki.org. 1L in Philip, philipsarnecki.org. All this information is up there. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. All of these shows are posted on our podcast and YouTube website. Go up there. There's 702,000 of you now downloading these shows, which is quite remarkable, and we appreciate all of you. But this show across Kansas is really important if you live here. These are very serious issues. The state needs help. We've been stuck in the mud for a long time. It's about time to get out of it. This is the man that can do it, Philip Sarnecki. He's running for governor. I hope you will take a moment to vote for him and go look at what he's actually saying he's going to do. Audits, taxes, education, faith programs that are going to help people out of poverty and other situations. Those are all things we need. Nobody's talking about this. He's talking about it. Website, philipsarnecki.org with 1L. All right, let's shift gears and talk about, we spend a lot of money on education in this state. Johnson County in particular. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, my grandchildren go to Blue Valley. It's a great school district. They're getting a great education. There's some fabulous programs there. My grandson's a wrestler at Blue Valley North. My granddaughter goes to, I can't remember the name of the elementary school, but it's part of the Blue College system. And they have great programs. They do a really good job. But when you look at overall in the state, let's just talk about 4th grade reading levels, because they're not all Blue Valley. Okay, and that's what I mean when I say that.
Well, and even if you dig into it, Blue Valley's, their results and test scores have dropped pretty dramatically.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
And but if you look across the state, let me give you a few numbers here just to kind of lay the groundwork for people so they understand. So we lead the nation in ACT test score declines as a state.
Wait a minute.
We lead the nation. ACT test score declines.
Declines.
That is correct.
Okay.
Number 2, last year we spent more money educating students in the state of Kansas than we have ever spent in the history of the state of Kansas. And we got the worst outcomes that we have ever got in the state of Kansas. For the first time ever, we fell below the national average in test scores. You mentioned 4th graders. It's a little over 70% of our 4th graders cannot read or do math proficiently at a 4th grade level. And so I think we rank, I believe it's 15th in spending as a state, but our NAEP outcomes are 40th. So we are, and listen, I don't want to throw everybody under the bus. Obviously, like you said, there are some good schools out there. There's some phenomenal teachers, of course. We've talked to a lot of them on the campaign trail in the last 10 months. But there is dramatic opportunity here, and we are failing the kids in the state of Kansas when you look at this, on a broad scale. And if we don't, this may be the most important thing that we have to tackle when we get in there. And the other thing I would encourage people strongly to do, so there is a constitutional amendment on the ballot this fall in the state of Kansas that we would now elect our Supreme Court justices.
Yeah. Yes.
Right now, I won't take the time to explain it, but we have a convoluted system in the state of Kansas. We're the only state that uses it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's essentially attorneys that are presenting 3 people to the governor. The governor has to pick one of those 3 people. Well, for the first 100 years of the state of Kansas, we voted on our Supreme Court justices. The people elected them. That's what we did. And back in, I believe it was 1958, there's a long story on how this happened, but they kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater and came up with this convoluted system. There's 22 other states right now that already vote for their state Supreme Court justices. And do I think it's perfect? No, but do I think it's dramatically better than what we have now? Yes, I do. And part of the problem we have is we have an unelected, unaccountable judicial branch.
That's right.
Who's telling the legislature how much money has to be spent on education. And so it's way outside of the purview of what they should be doing as a judicial branch. They're really doing another job, a legislative branch. So I strongly encourage people to go out and vote yes on that constitutional amendment that we would elect our Supreme Court justices.
Let me tell you a little story. So I get a cardboard flyer in my mailbox that tells me to vote no on this thing. And this is a month or 2 ago. And I'm like, what are we doing here? So I go look it up and I read the thing. And then I take the flyer and I turn it over on the back side. And in small print, it tells me who paid for that. Would you like to know who paid for it?
Who paid for it?
Planned Parenthood.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Does that tell you anything?
That tells you. Well,
tells you a lot.
We have 7 Supreme Court justices in the state of Kansas. We have 1 great conservative, and we have 6 liberal Supreme Court justices. So that's the system that this has got us here in Kansas. And obviously, that's not in alignment with a state that President Trump won 3 times by overwhelming margins. It's not in alignment with a state that has the longest running state in the country without a Democratic senator. We haven't had a Democratic U.S. senator in almost 100 years. And so it's just not in alignment with the people. And this is part of the reason for that.
Yeah, I have to go back to this because this just floors me. When we look at where we're at, 70% of these kids can't read at a 4th grade level, do math. We look at our test scores are down, all the rest of it. Yet this Republican legislature and this Democrat governor have increased spending by 1/3 by $10 billion, which begs the question, where the hell is the money going? If you're spending more money than you ever spent on education and you've raised the budget by 1/3, and where's the money going, Philip?
Well, a lot of it does go to education. The problem is we're not getting the outcomes that we need. And a big part of that is, so we actually have a state law in the state of Kansas, and I believe it's 60% of the education dollars are supposed to go to the classroom.
Right.
But it doesn't. I believe it's about 53% of the money that actually gets into the classroom, but nobody enforces that. So it's not being enforced. So what's happened is this massive administrative bloat where you've got, assistant principals to the assistant principal to the vice president to the superintendent. And I'm being a little facetious, but not dramatically facetious, right?
No, you're not.
So that's a lot of what's happening is you have this massive bureaucracy, really, that's happened in the education system. So this isn't the teacher's fault. We're not getting the money to the teachers in the classrooms where it needs to go. And so we have to change that. I'm really excited about my lieutenant governor, Joy Akins. Joy was running for governor. Yep. She's a very successful business owner down in Wichita. She's been the president of the chamber in Wichita, the largest chamber in the state. She was on the school board in Wichita.
So she knows the issues.
She knows them well for about 5 years. And she was the only conservative on that school board. And I tell you, she was threatened. She's been followed. The stuff that you hear about that's going on. And so now this is an unofficial role, but she has a passion for this. She has an expertise about this. And I want to make her kind of the unofficial education czar in the state of Kansas as the lieutenant governor. And she's really, really going to focus on getting this turned around.
When's the primary election?
August 4th.
Well, thank you for coming in here again.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you taking time. You're a busy man. You've got a lot going on. The show is called America's Healthcare Advocate. And I focus on healthcare 90% of the time, but sometimes I step out of the box. And when I see something I think is going to be impactful, that's when I step out. I stepped out on this on purpose because I know Philip. I've known him for 10 years, okay? I know who he is. He's an honest businessman, and I know what he's going to do. I'm urging you, if you want to see change, if you're tired of, you're complaining about the taxes, we're not doing well in education, we can't get businesses to Kansas, we're stuck in the mud. If you want to see change, you really want to make a difference, let's make a difference in the primary. Go to the website, philipsarnecki.org, 1L on Philip, go to the website, philipsarnecki.org, vote for him. We will have change. It's happened in other states. It just happened in Nebraska. It's happened with Bob Lee in Tennessee. We've talked about a number of the other governors. This has happened. Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. It can happen here, and it can make one hell of a difference if you'll make the difference and you'll vote for somebody that's going to make a difference in our lives, our children's lives, and our grandchildren's lives. I'm Kerry Hall. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate. Goodbye, America.